Today I've modified my version of Persona 5 to completely remove the EXP gain in the game, and I'm going to try to beat it, which is going to be really easy. So I'm also going to ban myself from going to the gym for stats, boosting SP in the temple, boosting stats in the Jazz Gym, and training for HP in Joker's room. These all allow me to boost various stats, and I think if I could benefit from these, the best strategy would just be to go to the gym like every day to eventually max out my HP and make the game easy. On the topic of making the game easy, DLC personas are also banned, so with my HP, SP, stats, skills, and available personas affected, let's see just how hard this run is by starting in the casino. After sneaking around, we encounter our first enemy, and right now our level is the same as a normal run, so I defeated the sacrificial Pyro Keeper with a few brave blades, got rescued by a mysterious girl, set the difficulty to hard, and proceeded along the usual intro sequence until we enter Kamoshida's palace, awaken to the power of Arsene, and start the first real fight for the game against Jack-o'-lanterns. You can't actually lose this fight, so I just turned on auto battle, reminded you to like and subscribe, gained my first 0 experience, then continued on until we met the level 2 Morgana, leading into the second enemy encounter, which is not difficult, along with the next fight against some Pixie. The only issue I had was running low on SP, since at level 1, Joker only has a max SP of 26. Luckily, right now we could leave the palace to restore it. For the next visit to Kamoshida's palace, there was mainly just a few more tutorial fights, one for ambushing, another for using a gun, and finally one for unleashing an all-out attack. After witnessing this, we get ambushed by Kamoshida, starting a fight where we die, then a level 4 Ryuji awakens to his persona, and the first mini-boss fight begins. The initial plan here was to use Zeos to down the Bicorns with Ryuji, then use another Zeo to take one down. Next, Joker defended to not die, and with Morgana, I tried to finish off the Bicorn, but came just short. Both enemies now doubled up into Ryuji, and he died. This was a big hit to my team's offense, so Joker now had to attack, and with his gun, he took out one enemy and got some chip on the main boss. Morgana now followed up on this with a strong Garu, and luckily Morgana could take one hit from the boss. Now I could really only just use my best attacks, and after Joker took a cleave, this turn I could have lost, but fortunately we dodged and finished them off. After leaving the palace, I get stuck in an endless loop because I wasn't paying attention. Then some people die, and eventually we return to Kamoshida's palace. The first tutorial battle here forces us to negotiate with a Pixie to gain it as a persona, and this is noteworthy as at level 1, Joker usually isn't able to do this, because you can't negotiate to gain personas of a higher level than you, unless you max out Yoshida's confidant. So for a very long time, Joker is going to be stuck with just Arsene and Pixie, which are both pretty bad, and they don't really have many skills. Anyway, this section ends with us gaining a level 5 Arn as a party member to fight against a boss, who I first used an Agi on for decent damage, and defended with everyone else to take their Magaru. After 2 more Agis and some more attacks, I just had to survive a basic attack to end the battle on the next turn. After this encounter ended, we could leave the palace, then get introduced to the clinic and airsoft shop, and now the tutorial is done and I can do whatever I want. So I picked up some armor upgrades for Joker and Arn, then purchased a few SP restoring drinks from the vending machines, and then headed straight into the palace, where we were forced to enter the Velvet Room to complete a tutorial where we must fuse a persona, which I can't actually complete because I'm level 1 and I can't fuse the level 3 Agarthion. So yeah, the evil Igor now just has us trapped in the Velvet Room until Joker dies of old age. For the purpose of this challenge, we're going to pretend that this tutorial never happened, and we're going to continue with just Arsene and Pixie. Anyway, as for palace exploration, I'm pretty much going to skip most regular enemies, since at base level, my team's SP is low, and I really want to conserve as much of it as possible for later on in the palace. Like for the first mini-boss, Archangel. This fight is pretty straightforward. Archangel's AI always charges, then goes for a big hit on a non-Joker party member with cleave, then they wait a turn and the pattern repeats. In a normal run, I could take one of these cleaves, but that doesn't work here. Their damage is just way too high, so I'd rather not defend to give me a chance to dodge a hit. In the case of a crit, they use the one more to use a regular attack that I think always targets Joker and will kill him. So the entire fight is basically a damage race. Every 3 turns, Archangel will use a charged cleave to kill someone that isn't Joker. So I just have to use my best possible attacks to kill him as quickly as possible. Meaning, I went for gunshots at first, then Arn and Morgana went for Garus, Joker fired off Ahas, and Ryuji's best option for damage is literally just going for basic attacks, as he doesn't have any physical skills at level 1. On my first couple of attempts, I lost, but I was extremely close to winning. Ultimately, what caused me to win was a lucky dodge on their first cleave, as now I had an extra party member going for damage. Luckily, I also dodged again and won the battle without suffering any casualties. After this, we found the first Will Seed, which is pretty nice as they restore a flat 10 SP, which is great since my max SP is low. Further up in the palace, I took the shortcut back to the entrance, then took the other path that led straight to the Will Seed boss. This guy is pretty tough as it has a lot of resistances and it's really tanky. Fortunately, they don't attack on the first turn. At first, I tried to freeze them with a flat damage item and it succeeded, so I passed turns until its turn was skipped. Then I broke the freeze with Morgana and passed to Ryuji to use Zio to hope for a shock, which worked. With the technical damage boost, firing off all of my ammo was the best play now, and since shock skipped another turn, I could safely deal enough damage to make their AI go for a heal. Now I could go for Zio again, land a shock, and use various attacks for even more damage. They then healed again, but I shocked them and easily won the fight from there. With my newly obtained Crystal of Lust, which isn't really useful, I just continued up the castle until I had to backtrack to fight the 2 Eligors. These 2 are pretty easy since I can ambush them so my whole team can act before they can, and since they're weak to electric, I can go for 3 Zios before they act, giving me a good chance to shock and skip their first action. With gun attacks, I could now destroy them, but they did recover and missed their attack on Mona, so it was pretty free to win now. The next guy was far easier, as after I landed a shock, 2 party members could unload on them, and I won without them getting a chance to damage me. With the eyes I collected, I opened the path with the scythes, and in the chest to the left was a great accessory which boosts HP by 10%, which I kept on Joker to hopefully minimize the chance he gets one-shot. From here, it was pretty much a clear path to the treasure, but before I left the palace, I farmed a large amount of yen to buy healing items for the fight against Kamoshida. Additionally, I made sure to pick up the armor that can be cleaned for a significant armor upgrade over the items sold in the airsoft shop. Anyway, once I was done farming, I left the palace, and before I sent the calling card, there were a few things I had to do. My first objective was to start Takemi's Confidant for the AoE heal items. Additionally, I wanted to boost my knowledge so I could perform well on the first exams. As if you don't know, if you do well on exams, you get a boost to your Confidant points when you progress school-related social links. And I wanted to get this boost because I can't benefit from the matching Arcana boost in this run, so I was hoping the exam boost would supplement this. When Sojiro allowed me to head out at night, like I mentioned before, I did some laundry for a big armor upgrade on most of my characters. Now I purchased my healing items, and most of them came from the pharmacy on Central Street, as there the 100 HP heals were cheap with the downside of lowering attack. After crafting some damage items to help the Kamoshida, I sent the calling card and headed straight for the top of the castle for the first big story boss, Kamoshida. This fight is pretty tough. At first, he goes for 2 volleyball assaults. These hit 1 to 3 times, and if it hits Morgana twice, he dies. If it hits Arn 3 times, she dies. Ryuji always survives if he's on full HP, and Joker, I think, can die to 3 hits if I'm unlucky. For this first stage of the fight, I pretty much just have to hit him with the strongest attacks I've got, use revives when needed, and heal with whatever items are best for the job. His volleyball assaults seem to not target the same target twice in a row, so Joker right now can't really die as long as he's fully healed. This changes though once he heals himself and we can target the trophy, as now he aims to buff his attack before going for volleyball assault. With this attack buff, he can now one-shot Joker, so I protected him with my only physical ointment to minimize the odds of a game over. But before breaking the trophy, I needed to make sure his attack isn't going to be buffed going into the next stage of the fight, where Mishima appears to set up Kamoshida's gold medal spike, which my whole party had to defend for, except Morgana, as he will get one shot even if he defends. So I just attacked to keep his chance to dodge, which actually saved his life, which was really useful. as now Shiho appears and we have to kill her to stop the next big spike attack. This was the perfect time to use my gun's ammo as I needed high burst damage to kill her before Kamoshida acted. Thanks to Morgana, I defeated her, and now the fight is pretty easy. We're given the prompt to steal the crown, but I don't deal enough damage to do that, so my best bet is to just attack. Luckily this phase is easy and predictable, as he only uses Golden Knife, which doesn't ever target Arn, and can't one-shot Joker or Ryuji. So the plan became use Joker to heal anyone who was injured, then attack with Arn and Ryuji, and defend with Morgana. Since Golden Knife can't really kill me, and I have a lot of heals, I pretty much just have to repeat this plan for like 10 minutes straight, which eventually led to my victory. And after escaping the palace, I could continue advancing my confidants, with the main objective being to rank up to Kemi, as pretty much all of her abilities are really good. Rank 3 lets me buy 200 HP AoE heals, rank 5 lets me buy SP adhesives to help with my low SP, rank 7's discount is great since I'm going to rely a lot on buying healing items in this run, and rank 10 is a complete game changer, as it allows me to buy cheap physical and magical ointment to allow me to repel physical and magical attacks with my party members. Since I've played this game before, I know pretty much what attacks each boss is going to use, so by spamming these items on my whole party, I can not only take no damage from most enemies, but also repel attacks back for a small amount of damage. Unfortunately, to reach rank 10, I need 4 charm, so it will take a while before I can use the ointment items. Anyway, the Kamoshida arc now ended, we met Bold Man, and I can now start Aunt's Confidant, assuming I have 2 kindness. For right now, this is the only confidant that can benefit from the matching Arcana boost because of Pixie, so I was prioritizing this for improved efficiency. After this, we picked up a really good gun for Joker, and then we had our first trip into Mementos, which is really annoying as sneaking past the enemies here doesn't really work that well. In here, we had to defeat Shadow Nakanohara, who immediately acted and killed Arn. Joker now acted and went for Zio to down them, and then we revived Arn. With my other allies, I tried to inflict an elemental status, but I think they're immune to that. They now killed Ryuji, so I revived him, and now I changed my plan slightly as I started to use sleep vials to skip their turns. This gave me a decent amount of damage across the time they were slept, but a large portion of it was healed, and without sleep vials to skip their turn, they targeted Joker, and I game overed. For my next attempt, the plan of putting them asleep still seemed to be a good idea. I just needed more damage, which I could do by remembering I have guns to do decent damage one time, and after that I could spam flat damage items as their damage far exceeds my damage without them. Since I dealt more damage this time, my supply of sleep vials could keep them asleep for the entire fight, and I won without too much trouble. After we left Mementos, I really needed to start prioritizing working at the beef bowl shop to unlock Yoshida's confidant, as it's probably the best confidant in the game for this challenge, as at rank 10 I'll gain the ability to gain personas from negotiations, which is going to make Joker go from being fairly mediocre to the best character in the game. The only issue is you can only rank this confidant up once a week on Sundays, so it was going to take a while before I maxed it out. Next up in Shujin, we first had the exams, and then we got introduced to Moroki, who is a pretty good confidant as he's the only way I can boost Joker's SP. Later, we met up with Yusuke and had our first exploration of Madarame's palace, which has no combat encounters, but after we left, we soon reached the next deadline. Okay, so before I head into Madarame's palace, I wanted to reach rank 5 with Takemi to buy SP adhesives. The problem here is I don't actually have the money to buy one, so I just immediately headed into the museum to pick up more yen. In case you were wondering, in pretty much all of the normal battles, my plan was to just down all of the enemies and negotiate with them for money to end the battle immediately, as killing them would take a while. The first stretch of this palace actually doesn't feature any required mini-bosses, but the enemies here can drop valuable damage items that I farmed a few of once I reached the door at the end. Before leaving, I wanted to fight the Savage Shadow Shikioji, as this shadow is the only way to pick up the best male laundry gear for this palace. That grants a huge defense upgrade, so obviously I want to pick it up. My plan to beat this guy was pretty simple. I had On equip the accessory you get in this palace that gives Fray, and I used that to down them, and since they're a Savage Shadow, I can't negotiate with them unless their HP is below 25%. So I then passed Joker and made use out of Pixie's passive ability, which increases the chance to inflict shock when an enemy is down. With them shocked, I could use flat damage items to deal a flat 50 damage with multiple party members, but once they recovered, I had to be careful as they could one-shot me. Now I just revived On and tried for a freeze to skip an action, then I downed them and repeated my plan of using Pixie to go for a shock. With a few more flat damage items, I got them down to low HP, and now I just had to survive a taunt, then down them to negotiate for an armor upgrade. What's worth mentioning now is you can start the Strength Confidant by possessing a Jack Frost with Mabufu. Obviously, without Yoshida's rank 10 ability, I can't do that, but what I want to say about this is advancing this social link beyond rank 2 is impossible, as it tasks you with creating a persona with triple fusion. Since I'm level 1, I can't use Flordrius, so it won't be possible for me to pick up one of the best abilities in the game with the passive on Strength rank 5. That lets you make any persona you want if you have the money. Anyway, I now left the palace, and the story continued until Joker and Ryuji had to fight this mini-boss. This guy is pretty difficult because he just one-shots me, and my damage is pretty bad here. So my best bet is to use Molotov cocktails for a flat 50 while downing them. By defending, I could take one hit, but that didn't really save me when Ryuji died, so I revived him and was completely wiped to a Maega. Next time, I just used a strong combo of hit a weakness, then defend with the one more turn. With some luck of them going for Ryuji, my Molotov cocktails damage eventually just barely gave me a path to victory. But soon after this, a level 15 Yusuke awakened to his persona, and we were faced with another boss fight. Luckily, Yusuke is pretty strong, and with his ice skills into Giant Slice, I could take out one enemy. Now, On may have died, but Joker got a turn, and I used it to use an Ice Spray to pass to Yusuke to deal big damage on the main boss with Giant Slice. On the small guy's turns, they just buffed evasion, so I just used Ice Spray, then passed to Yusuke for another substantial hit on the boss. Unfortunately, with their evasion buffed, the small guys now could only attack, and I couldn't survive all the damage coming my way, so I lost. Next time, I dodged the boss's first attack with Yusuke's passive, and also one of Yusuke's Giant Slices crit the boss, setting me up for an all-out attack that does awful damage. But it set me up to kill the small guys with an Ice Spray into Yusuke's Bufus. Unfortunately, my next Giant Slice missed, but that didn't matter as Ryuji dodged thanks to Yusuke's passive. With the boss on low HP, I could now kill them before they attacked again. In the real world, I now advanced a few confidants like Takemi's to gain an SP adhesive, and then I headed straight back into the palace. And what's important now is I can pick up skill cards from negotiations, so I could add a few more skills to Pixie and Arsene, which was a nice upgrade. In the new area, the first mini-boss was nothing special. With Yusuke's ice skills, I could down the weaker enemies and pass the Joker to shock the boss with his gun. By passing to On, I dealt decent AoE damage, and the two enemies that acted just used supportive abilities, so now I could down them with an item, then pass to Yusuke for massive damage. Then with guns, I could easily clean up all the enemies on low HP. Past this, the next required fight is here against 3 Makami. This was really easy, I just used Zio to down them, and with a baton pass boost, I used Yusuke to deal massive damage and finish them off easily one by one. Now, the next boss, the guy guarding the Will Seed, is extremely difficult and took me over an hour to beat. The problem here is they have 2 extremely powerful AoE attacks that one-shots my whole party, and they can also charm my whole team to skip my turns, and in addition to this, they're really tanky. The only way I could stand a chance here was to use Shock and Freeze to skip their turns. Like when I fought Shikioji, the easiest way to do this is to use Pixie's passive ability for an increased chance for a shock on a downed enemy. And of course, the moves I have to consistently down them are both Garo and Fray, which I can only get from accessories. What was actually an interesting combo I found I can do here is freeze them to skip one turn, then break them out of freeze with a physical attack, and then inflict shock to skip a second consecutive action. This is necessary as if they get a turn, they're very likely likely to just kill my whole team. Another issue with this fight is it lasts a long time because my damage is bad. In fact, the fight lasts so long that I actually ran out of damage items to use, so after I lost enough times, I actually farmed them from the shadows earlier on in the palace. Okay, so now you know why this is hard, so let's jump into what a good attempt would look like. So first off, I used a sleep vial to skip their first turn, then I tried to down them with Arn, which failed, but luckily Joker froze the boss with a freeze spray. Now I buffed Yusuke's attack with a muscle drink and let loose a powerful giant slice to down them, and with the one more, I tried to inflict freeze, which luckily skipped one of their turns. Now with Arn, I broke them out of freeze and used Joker with Pixie to inflict a shock. This gave me 2 turns to deal damage with my whole team, but I spared 1 turn to use a Rancid Gravy on Joker to boost evasion, increasing the chance I survived Flash Bomb that missed thanks to Yusuke's passive. With my final freeze spray, I managed to freeze them, which gave me an opportunity to buff my team's attack with an item and then wait for the next turn. Now, I broke their freeze with Arn and passed to Yusuke to try for a freeze again, but that didn't work. Fortunately, Joker landed a shock with Zio, and now I could just spam damage items and Garu, which led me to victory before they could attack again. With the third will seed in hand, we forged the Crystal of Vanity, which removes weaknesses, which is okay right now, but when we upgrade this with Jose, it's going to become really good with the Absorb 1 attack ability. From this point in the palace, it was a clear shot to the end, and before I left, I wanted to try to beat the level 20 challenge battle for the Heatwave accessory for a strong AoE physical attack. Unfortunately, the final wave here was way too difficult, so after picking up some items, I left the palace, purchased a HP increasing accessory, cleaned some laundry for an armor upgrade, then sent the calling card, leading to the Madarame boss fight. The first phase of this fight is quite straightforward. I need to kill him before he kills me, and the most deadly aspect of this phase is the right eye that goes for various elemental attacks that can hit my weaknesses. The left eye only uses supportive abilities, so I don't have to worry about that. Then for the nose, it attacks with wind magic, which doesn't exploit any important weaknesses, and while the mouth is strong, it can't one-shot Joker thanks to his armor that reduces physical damage and a defense buff from an item. After surviving the first turn, I revived, took more damage, and then I used physical skills with Yusuke to focus down the right eye. With some decent luck, I survived another round and defeated the right eye, which will now cause Madarame to waste turns to bring it back on low HP, where I can finish it off with ease. They also now start to use this move to make a party member weak to everything, but that's easy to overcome by simply defending. My first attempt actually lost here to an unlucky one-shot on Joker, and to make this fight easier, I picked up Regent, as you can recruit treasure demons while underleveled, and I itemized this for an attack boost at the start of the fight for Yusuke, which let me unload my ammo to take out the deadly right eye faster. By using some ointment items, keeping Joker alive here wasn't too much trouble, and in time I took down both the nose and the left eye, which prompted me to send someone to cover them in black paint to make it easy to finish off this phase and move on to the phase that I found to be much harder. When I've previously played this game, I've always used the strat of downing all of the Madarames and using a physical skill to wipe them all out while dealing some damage to the main boss. But in this run, I don't have a single AoE physical attack, so I had to think of a new plan. Considering my low damage output, I couldn't actually take out the fakes very quickly, which gave them an opportunity to attack and maybe kill me by striking Joker's ice weakness on both Arsene and Pixie. With 5 enemy targets, it's very likely that Joker dies here, so that's kind of what I had trouble with. I can't kill the fakes very quickly, and since they're alive, they'll easily kill me within a few turns. The fakes also respawn immediately after being defeated too, making it even harder. Originally when I did this fight, I thought Madarame summons weak sleeping fakes based on the number of fakes you've beaten, so I tried to last as long in the fight as possible, and I learned that this isn't the case, and it's actually based on the real Madarame's HP. So after losing for like an hour, I switched up my strategy to focus down the real Madarame. I did this by downing one of the fakes and passing to Yusuke to deal big damage. Then I did it again and again, but on Yusuke's turn, I didn't have a baton pass boost, so I instead just buffed my team's defense. Since I had Makarakan active on Joker, I avoided them from striking his weakness and barely survived the other attacks. So now I defended, buffed attack, and set up a big baton pass on Yusuke to deal even more damage, and then I healed to ensure my survival. Unfortunately, for the next 2 turns, I didn't really have a good window to attack Madarame, so I just took out the fire fake, severely injured the other fakes, and got a small amount of damage on Madarame. After the fake just boosted attack, I could down him with Joker, pass to Yusuke, and attack. Then with Ryuji, I could down another fake, pass to Yusuke, and hit for near lethal damage. So with Arn, I could down an enemy again and pass to Yusuke to land the killing blow and defeat Madarame. Now, outside of the palace, I increased the confidants I explained were good before, and I gained a new one with the Faith Confidant that, similarly to Maraki's, is really good, as it's the only way I can boost Joker's base HP. So when it was available, I prioritized boosting this. Following this was the perfect time to head to Mementos to complete a few requests that weren't really that hard, but the main big upgrade I got here was the Ring of Vanity, which gives the skill Bleeding Dry Brush that I can use on any party member to protect them from one attack, which is great in this run as I'm usually getting one-shots. Once I was done there, I returned to the real world and could now start Kawakami's Confidant, which is always nice, giving me more opportunities to boost social stats, and it was great for this run as it let me do laundry without wasting time. Soon after this, the Madarame arc concluded, and we were forced to visit Kichijoji, where I obtained this decent accessory to improve my team's accuracy in normal encounters, and while here we boosted Joker and Ryuji's Baton Pass rank. For the next week or so, we just had story, so I couldn't really do much, but when I had the time, I played billiards to improve my team's technical rank. During this time, I could now spend time with the twins, which actually has some value in this run, as right now, skill cards are the only way for me to gain new skills. And also, for doing enough outings, you unlock the final outing with Lavenza, which gives the Enduring Soul skill card, which is really good, so I want it. Similarly, the Yusuke Confidant that I unlocked was also useful for duping valuable skill cards, as farming for more of them is really annoying because the drop rate on the cards is very low. Also, to unlock his Confidant, you have to fight 5 slimes, which is a somewhat interesting encounter, as these slimes start to explode on their first turn, which I'm pretty sure is impossible to dodge, and it 2-shots Joker. The way I won here is I just got lucky with turn order, and after the first slime exploded, I got a turn and healed Joker to take a second explosion, which killed the remaining 3 slimes. Now, in just a few days, we had our first trip into Kanashiro's palace, which eventually initiated a somewhat tough fight against some Onis. At the start here, I just used Joker's gunshots to shock both enemies, then by abusing technical attacks, I could pass to Yusuke and wipe out all of the Onis before they could strike. But we wasn't done yet, as 2 Onis entered the battle. Before I killed the last 2 Onis, I put up a barrier on Joker, and now another on Arn, so despite me not getting a shock on both Onis, I could survive their AoE, then revive the team and get lucky with a freeze. Since on this turn, they only used a basic attack, I could shock the right guy and rely on Yusuke to clean this fight up without issue. Next, we got ambushed and retreated until a level 21 Makoto awakened to her persona, initiating a mini-boss battle that killed me. At first, I had to down the main boss with Makoto, then I attacked again with the one more, and finally aimed for a freeze on one of the Onis. Makoto now tanked a Bufula, and on Joker's turn, I used his gun to shock 2 enemies, which gave him a one more so he could pass to Makoto, so she could clear out the Onis with Mafrey. Then a Vajra Blast and Giant's Life was good enough for me to win. Now, the Kanashiro arc has officially started. However, before doing anything, I wanted to raise my technical rank, since doing that's really strong. Inside the palace, I had to pick between ditching Arn or Ryuji, with Ryuji having better survival and Arn having higher SP to use supportive abilities. Ultimately, I decided on Arn since using multiple Bleeding Dry brushes seemed to be pretty strong. Next, we unlocked the Showtime mechanic, and after that was this really easy mini-boss where I basically used Vajra Blast 2 times to wipe out all of the enemies. After a short extra section, I fought the next mini-boss, who buffs on their first turn and dies to Makoto before they can do anything else. The subsequent boss was also pretty easy, I just inflicted them with shock and gunned them down with Yusuke. For this next section, I need to look out for Lidan Seedhi, as they have a chance to give defense debuff skill cards in negotiations, which is a big increase in my damage. At the end of this area was 3 mini-bosses at once. To To start the fight off, I used a nuclear move past the Joker down the right enemy and tried for a shock on the center enemy who repelled the attack. Now they buffed attack and almost wiped my entire team with Mabufula that I luckily dodged. On Arn's turn, I needed to protect Joker, so I went for Bleeding Dry Brush, which led into her getting punched. With Joker and Makoto, I dealt a little more damage, but it wasn't enough to defeat anyone, and I had to heal for the next turn. Luckily, Makoto barely endured the wind attack and Yusuke dodged the ice move. Here, I tried for a crit, which succeeded, then I passed to Joker, then to Makoto, and with Mafrey, I wiped out the 2 side enemies. Now Arn used a Showtime for the final blow, and we won, clearing the way forward to the next area. I don't really like the vault part of this palace, and the first required battle here was very straightforward. I used Forget to skip their first action, then landed a shock with Joker's gun, and won the fight easily from there. The final wheelsuit boss was the last enemy I needed to fight here, and while I could certainly lose the fight if I got unlucky, I could skip a majority of their turns by inflicting Forget on Makoto's first turn, then I could shock them to skip another, and by the third turn, my team was set up with Bleeding Dry Brush, so I wasn't really afraid of them, but this time they just used taunts, and yeah, I just shocked them and won without much more effort. For winning this fight, we picked up the Wheel Seed accessory, and it's really good as it gives me an easy way to buff my whole team's defense, which I was going to need for the Kanashiro boss fight. Speaking of the Kanashiro boss fight, I now found the treasure, left the palace, then boosted the baton rank of most of my party, and did laundry for better armor. Now, I thought I was ready to face Kanashiro, but when he used much of the piggy, it one-shot Joker, so I had to find a solution for that, which led me into the first area of mementos, as here I could find slime, and request items until they gave a Tarunda skill card to lower attack. In addition to this, I also talked with Succubus to pick up Sleep Boost for the second part of the Kanashiro fight. Additionally, I could now actually full clear the second challenge battle, which gave me the Heatwave accessory, for a stronger physical attack that I can use on Makoto. Next, I picked up an SP Adhesive Free, which lowered Joker's HP a bit, but it allowed him to spam 8 SP debuff abilities on every turn, thanks to its 7 SP restoration per turn. With my preparations complete, I was now actually ready to fight Kanashiro. Okay, at the start here, I need to go for an attack debuff, then buff my defense and use Bleeding Dry Brush to maximize my odds of survival. Makoto with heat waves could do decent damage, and my defensive buffs made it really easy to survive until they went for March of the Pig, a strong almighty attack that I had to defend in order to survive. Now we get prompted to drop a valuable item to stop Kanashiro from using this attack, and this changes the fight slightly, as now he only attacks once per turn, but he gains a new move that can inflict the party with fear, which isn't really that scary since I've got the items to cure it. As long as my party was buffed and they were debuffed, I couldn't get one shot, so I didn't really have any trouble here. I just had to keep everyone healed with items. But before I triggered phase 2, I set up a Bleeding Dry Brush, as immediately on phase 2, Kanashiro gets to attack, and this part can be very scary, as he uses Lullaby and then Snap for a technical hit. Now his goons followed up and didn't do much damage. Here I used a large sleep vial to put both his bodyguards asleep, then I downed them with Makoto and used the one more to sleep everyone again. Yusuke then protected Joker, and on his turn I debuffed Kanashiro's defense. With Makoto, I dealt a little more damage, and the main reason I found this phase to be pretty easy was when the enemies got a turn, they didn't really deal much damage. By using more sleep vials to skip enemy turns, I wasn't really at risk of game overing, and eventually I found out that you can shock Kanashiro, which gave all my physical attacks a big 1.7 damage multiplier. After this, he used Make It Rain a few times, which didn't kill me, and then the bodyguards ran away, making the fight way easier. And finishing off Kanashiro now was pretty free. In the real world, there were a few new confidants I could start, but none of them were really that important besides Chihaya, who has a really nice rank 5 ability to boost any confidant you want for a small fee. Other than that, nothing important happened from here until the conclusion of the Kanashiro arc. So next up, I actually reached 4 charm and could head into Mementos to continue to Kemi's confidant by beating a fairly easy mini-boss. Also, while I was here, I upgraded the Bank Will Seed accessory, which makes the defense buff cost less, which is nice, and it additionally gives the user Tetrakarn and Makarakarn at the start of battle. Pretty good to help me avoid some one-shots. This Mementos visit ended pretty quickly, so after sitting through the initial Futaba arc cutscenes, the arc could truly begin as we had 26 days until the cleanse. Since it's somewhat relevant right now, it's worth mentioning that throughout this challenge, I equipped my characters with stat boosting melee weapons rather than high damage ones, as I was pretty much never going for normal attacks, so the extra stats benefited me more. Before exploring the palace, I wanted to max out Yoshida's Confidant, which means Joker's now really good as I can gain whatever enemies I face as personas. Additionally, I maxed out my technical rank and also maxed out Takemi's Confidant, so I could purchase the incredible ointment items. What's also worth noting here is I reached rank 4 with Hifumi, which unlocks a new bookstore that if I read all the books there, I can learn some new ways to deal technical damage. So with my team significantly powered up, I was ready to take on Futaba's palace. Combat-wise, I think this palace is pretty boring. There's like 4 required fights here, and 2 of them are like the same fight. Anyway, the first was against Garuda. I first here tried to shock them with guns, which failed, and they unleashed a strong wind attack that Joker repelled because of my newly obtained persona, Onzu. By firing with my elemental guns, I managed to freeze and knock them down, setting me up to deal some decent damage. Next turn, they didn't attack, but Makoto did, and almost one-shot Joker. But we survived, used a showtime, and sealed the deal with a shock to amp up my damage. So now we could explore the pyramid, and here I was faced with the Savage Shadow, Anubis, who if I drop to low HP, I can recruit in a negotiation. The battle against this guy was surprisingly easy. I just shocked them to skip a turn, then they didn't attack, and I shocked them again. Shockingly, they refused to attack on their next turn, so recruiting them was pretty easy. The next boss is really funny because they don't actually do much other than turn you into mice, and the only challenge here is if they're on low HP, they can use Megiddo, which could wipe out my entire team. Next time though, I didn't suffer from the same issue, as I downed them, passed to Makoto, and they exploded to a showtime. Yeah, and surprisingly enough, the next mini-boss is literally just the same fight, and I just showtimed them again. The Wheelseed boss was a little more challenging with their strong ice and gun skills, along with their huge HP pool. This fight is a fantastic place to showcase the strength of the ointment items, as by using them I can protect a majority of my team from their extremely deadly AoE skills. Unfortunately, there wasn't really an easy way to deal damage here. They repel physical and they have really high defense. So flat damage items are the key to success. With their high chance to inflict status effects, I could also skip some of their turns, and ultimately, there's not too much more to say about this fight. Futaba's Wheelseed accessory is not very useful, so now I was done with the palace and could experience peak gameplay. Then I sent the calling card, sprinted through the new area, and began the Wakaba fight. This is probably the easiest palace boss in the game, and before Futaba awakens to her persona, we just have to survive 3 attacks. A slam, a wing blast, and a powerful dive that was blocked thanks to bleeding dry brush. Now there was a cutscene and Futaba joins the team, and supports us during this fight by repelling back most of the damage Wakaba deals to us. So really, all I had to do was lower her defense to boost my damage, knock her down with the ballista, then unleash all of my physical attacks that she takes significantly more damage from. Once Wakaba recovered, she attacks once again, losing all of her HP, and Joker finishes her off with a shot of his gun. From here, nothing important happened until Futaba woke up, then we helped her out, and we then headed off to Hawaii for the school trip. When that ended, we reached the best part of the game where Morgana runs away, we meet Beauty Thief, and chase the two around until they decide to join the team to steal Okumura's heart. During this section, I could now talk with Futaba, who has okay abilities until rank 10, but her rank 10 ability, Final Guard, is ridiculously good, as if any party member is about to die, it activates to save them. Unfortunately, you can't unlock this ability until the next palace, as you can't complete her request in Mementos until it expands. Once I realized this, I just immediately headed straight into the palace. And right away, there was an extremely good persona to pick up with Arahabaki, who repels all physical attacks, which is extremely good, but Actually, this wasn't the best persona I could get here, as the Savage Shadow Girimakawa also repels physical, and additionally is immune to Curse, which can just by itself cheese some fights. But before I got Girimakawa, I had to fight Haru's fiancé. This isn't really a difficult fight, as I have a lot of tricks to prevent myself from taking damage, so by lowering their defense and using baton passes, I could just mostly rely on the new level 36 Haru to Masayo down everything in my path. So I managed to win without getting hit once. Now I could take 2 elevators to this area with a few basic mini-boss encounters. There isn't really much to say about these. Joker can repel back most of the damage the enemies do with Arahabaki or Girimakawa, so for pretty much all of these there isn't really any threat for me to game over, so I could just slowly win by baton passing around and rely on Haru's solid damage output. Anyway, as for the shadows here, in negotiations, I can pick up 150 damage items, which are great for baton passing around in the Okumura fight. Additionally, some of the personas here I could itemize into powerful boost and amp skills, which is also nice for Okumura, as the fight is a damage check. Later on, there was another pretty basic mini-boss encounter. With Girimakawa, I could lower the defense of all of them, and later switch to Belphegor to use powerful ice skills to down them, and next pass to Haru and deal massive damage with triple down. This fight consists of multiple waves, but the core strategy stays the same for the whole battle, and it's not very difficult. In the next section, I found the Wheelseat boss, and they're easy, as they have an obvious attack pattern of using Famine Screen into God's Hand that I can repel back for massive damage, and finally they use a powerful AoE Bless skill that will do no damage if I abuse Magic Ointment. The attack pattern now repeats, and since I know exactly what they'll do, there's no chance I can die. With the Wheelseat accessory in hand, I headed for the treasure room, and now I could leave the palace. But first, I set Joker up with a good electric and nuke persona, as for the Okumura boss fight, that was going to be a necessity to win. Before sending the calling card, I remembered to use the Jazz Djinn to teach Futaba the Support Plus skills, then I picked up an accessory for Haru to boost her psi damage by 50%, and I also exchanged my gear for AoE defense down items. To help further, I spent like 40 minutes trying to beat this challenge battle, but I couldn't do it, so I just sent the calling card, headed straight for the treasure room, and actually discovered something I didn't know existed. As if you head out of this room, you can actually take a grappling hook point to skip straight ahead to the boss. For wave 1 here, they're weak to fire and have low HP, so I buffed Haru's attack, baton passed around for a huge extra power boost, and defeated them all at once with triple down. Wave 2 was also pretty easy. I just downed them with ice skills, passed to everyone to give Haru a huge power boost with Masayo. Next wave, I did pretty much the same thing, but used Joker with a strong Maziaga. The fourth was just another situation where I wiped out most of them with triple down. Wave 5 is where this fight can be difficult, because the enemies have a very large HP pool that you have to deplete within 2 turns. Luckily, I've come prepared with a defense down skill to boost my damage, and with some baton passes, I could amplify Haru's damage even further, setting her up to almost wipe the whole squad with 2 Masayos. With damage items, I cleaned out the final enemy, and next we were faced with a more traditional boss fight, which is very easy if you know they're vulnerable to shock. With a Futaba charge and a defense down debuff, I effortlessly destroyed them with triple down. Shadow Haru is not a fight that amounts to anything, her explosion just doesn't really hurt much, so a single melee attack took Okumura down, and then he died. Immediately following this, I headed straight into Mementos to advance the cheetah in the arcade request, which unlocks the Shinya Confidant. Additionally, while I was here, I upgraded Okumura's Wheelseat accessory, which is very good with its Concentrate and Ally ability. Also, I found that now I could use flowers to purchase AoE buff Ofuda items, which means I can pretty much buff as much as I want now. Once I was done there, we eventually entered Maruki's palace, and the boss fight here is real easy. I just concentrated Sumire and she destroyed them in a few turns. But while I was here, I checked Sandrion's stats and found the silliest way you could spoil yourself on when Violet actually joins at level 75. Eventually we saw the end of the Okumura arc, which led into the school festival, where we end up joining forces with a level 45 Akechi to explore Sai's casino. His introductory fight is technically a mini-boss, which was no problem. I just attacked once with Akechi, then repelled back 2 hits of their first attack, and when Akechi's turn came around again, he destroyed them with Megiddo-La. Once that was over, I spent my free time heading into Mementos to first cheese the Sojiro Confidant boss by spamming ointment items, and then to complete Futaba's request so I could max out her Confidant for Final Guard. In addition to this, I started Haru's Confidant, which allows me to plant vegetables to charge and concentrate a team member. These are extremely good, as if I have a party member that deals low damage, instead of attacking with them, I can just use their turn to boost the damage of my best damage dealer by 2.5 times. Anyway, now I was done preparing and entered Sai's Casino. The boss encounters here are pretty easy. Like for the first one, Bullet Hell activated to deal a little damage, and with a shock, I won before they could even attack. At the end of the rigged dice room section, there was another battle, where on their only opportunity for damage, Final Guard activated, so it was easy. Similarly, Norn only got one opportunity to kill me, before Akechi, Haru, and Joker dispatched them. We now had to leave the palace, and before I returned, I decided to fight Akechi in a 1v1 battle. This battle is pretty easy. Akechi has an obvious attack pattern. At first he goes for Megaton Raid, then goes for Eiga, and the pattern ends with Koga. Because I knew exactly what he'll do, I can just switch to a persona that repels or nulls the attack he's going for. However, this attack pattern changes slightly once he reaches about half HP, as now he immediately goes for Megiddo-La, and despite defending, this actually one-shot me. So I actually saw the rare extra dialogue you get if he defeats you here. Next time, the only change I had to make to survive this was to just buff Joker's defense before I dropped him to half HP. Past this point, he repeats the predictable pattern of Megiddo-La, Megaton Raid, Koga, and Eiga. Since only one of these moves could actually hurt me, it didn't really take me too long to beat him, resulting in me ranking his Confidant up to 8, and next I was forced into Sai's Palace to finish the place off. The first boss here is another example of Final Guard being extremely good, as I don't really have to care if the mini-boss gets a turn anymore, since their first instance of lethal damage is negated, and my damage right now is pretty good, so the guy didn't get another chance to deal damage. To progress, I now had to head into the Dark Room, which is home to a very important persona with Rangda, who is good as it repels physical and nulls curse, but more importantly, I can negotiate with them for debilitate items to fully lower an enemy's stats. These are extremely good, and they're pretty easy to farm, as with a Rangda of my own, Joker is immune to all damage they'll deal to me, so I can just keep requesting more items without worry, and before leaving this palace, I had like 20 of these. Anyway, for the mini-boss for this section, they're another example of an enemy that just dies too quickly to present any danger. The solo Joker Arena Gauntlet was also easy, as the first 2 Ganeshas could only use physical attacks that can't harm Joker. As I said before, the Rangda can't affect Joker too, and while 4 could eventually use electric moves, they initially just charged for a big physical strike that, when repelled, almost killed them instantly. So it was pretty easy, and until the 20th, I was done with this palace. In this time, I acquired this axe that boosts HP, learned skills in the Jazz Djinn, and stood completely still in Mementos to find the Reaper and let them ambush me, which will reduce their number of actions down to 1. And with the Ring of Greed on one of my party members, the Reaper will have an easy to predict attack pattern of Concentrate into Megiddo-La, and then it repeats. The only issue here is surviving the attack, and as long as my defense is up and their attack is down, they can't one-shot Joker, so slowly with flat damage items, I dealt consistent damage and stayed healthy with heal items. So on the turn they'd concentrate, I slowly dealt damage with flat damage items and stayed healthy with heal items. Then on the turn they'd use Megiddo-La, I defended with most of my team. By repeating this for about 15 minutes, I defeated them and picked up a very good accessory with the Divine Pillar, which gives the skill Firm Stance to half damage taken. That was perfect on Joker to maximize his odds of survival. Next up, I used a mod to allow me to fight the twins outside of New Game Plus, and naturally, while the high level Akechi Itachi was in my party, I thought now was the perfect time to fight them. But after fighting them, I noticed a few problems with doing it right now. The first one is they hit very hard with their AoE skills. Then the next problem is my AoE damage right now is low, as Joker can only obtain medium level AoE magic skills. But if I explore Shido's palace, I can find the next tier up magic for a decent damage increase. Additionally, clearing Shido's palace would give me stronger armor and personas with better stats. So right now, I deem this to be a little too hard, but after beating Shido, I should be able to beat them. On the topic of boss fights, next up was Shadow Sai, which in this first stage of the fight actually one-shot me when I bet HP for the first roulette spin. The solution to this was simple, I just had to change his accessory from the Divine Pillar to one that boosts HP. So now I could take the blow and focus on buffing my team until we could catch Sai in the act and the fight could truly begin, where she spins a wheel to determine what attack she uses. Obviously, this completely telegraphs what moves she'll use, so when it was on Nuclear, I protected Haru with Magic Ointment, and I kept Sai debilitated to make the fight more manageable. My main damage output here was Akechi with Megiddo and Joker with whatever ability was best for Sai's current form. Overall, it didn't really take too long to drop her to low health and trigger phase 2, when she switches to Almighty. Since I knew this was going to happen, I had my team set up with Physical Ointment to repel back Brutal Impact that she uses at the start of this phase, and the repel damage here just killed her instantly and the fight was over. We now had to escape the casino, which forced a fight against an enemy that can't actually do any damage, and after that I tried to shock Joker in the Sumire fight to prevent the game from doing an all-out attack, but that doesn't work. Joker now got sent to jail, shot in the face, but not actually, then he escaped, and we had a new target with Masayoshi Shido. In the initial visit to his palace, the only required battle was against Cerberus, who didn't get a chance to attack me. Once we were done scouting around, we had 23 days to finish the palace, and with a little bit of preparation, I was ready to head inside. The 5 letters of introduction bosses here are all relatively easy. The first one doesn't even really attack, they just set up for a giga single target hit that did nothing, and I killed them with the usual tricks. The gimmick on the next guy is he uses charm skills to hit the party for technical damage with his AoE Sai moves, but since Sai is the only way they can deal damage, if Joker was on a Sai immune persona, I didn't really have to think too much and could focus on damage for an easy win. Next up was the TV President, who consists of a team that mostly just uses physical attacks, which again can't harm Joker, making it almost impossible for me to lose and winning an inevitability. Similarly, the Willseed boss only uses physical moves, so Joker literally could not die, and with repel damage, I won fairly quickly. The IT President was probably the most interesting one of the 5, and they still didn't pose much of a challenge. They primarily go for instant kill moves, which don't do damage really since I have some homunculus, and the 2 summoned enemies just use weak basic and nuclear skills. Because of the summoned enemies, I could set up for a big damage boost with baton passes, and once the main boss went down, the summoned enemies were pretty easy, and I won with a showtime. For the cleaner, I just had Joker on Rangda, who took no damage from any of this guy's attacks, so I just turned on auto battle, left the game running for like 5 minutes, and came back to a dead boss. Before we could leave the area, we were faced with Akechi for an actual boss fight. At first here, he calls upon 2 powered up normal enemies that go for basic attacks, so with Physical Ointment and a good persona, I could repel back their damage to make this easy. Akechi now stepped forward, and I didn't really have much trouble here, as I protected Joker from harm with Magic Ointment, giving me some extra damage that combined with President Insight boosted Freydines, resulted in a very quick battle. He now switched to Loki, and the battle continued. For the first stage of the fight, he sticks to using Tetrakarn and physical attacks like Brave Blade, so sticking to the plan of protecting my team with ointment items and going for powerful Freydines was enough to win here. Once he was on about half HP, he switched to focus on using Makarakan and magical attacks, like AoE fire moves and Aegon. So I just started punching him with God's Hands and repelling back attacks, this time with Magic Ointment. Overall, this wasn't too hard, and just before I defeated him, he used Levitain on Joker, which is an almighty move, but Makoto saved him, so I won without issue. Akechi now dies, and with all 5 letters of introduction, we could leave the palace, send the calling card, and face Shido. For the first stage of the fight, Shido is immune to physical and mostly uses physical attacks for damage, and even Tetra Break to make my ointment items less effective. However, by buffing up Joker's attack and lowering his stats with Debilitate, I could deal huge damage with Freydine, so I only had to survive 2 of his turns for this phase. For turn 1, he literally did nothing, and on turn 2, he did low damage to Yusuke while removing buffs. After a second Freydine, they changed phase to one where they primarily go for predictable magic attacks that I could repel back with Magic Ointment. Since they resist magic here, I was primarily using God's Hands for damage, and overall, this phase wasn't too hard. Now, the final phase here could pose some challenge as they exclusively use powerful almighty moves, but they're mostly single target, so if they went for Joker, an ally could just protect him from harm, so with a few damage items and Freydines, I won without too much trouble. Moving me on to the second fight. For the start here, he only gets 1 chance to attack, so by keeping him debuffed with Ofuda items and my team's defense buffed, offensively he wasn't too scary, and the usual plan for damage worked just fine. Despite him sometimes going for almighty skills, the battle was really easy until phase 2, where he now acts twice a turn and uses a larger variety of moves like various magic attacks and AoE physical moves. Luckily, the damage here isn't anything unmanageable, at least not until he's dropped below around 50% of his max HP, where he now buffs up, gains extra turns, and tries to wipe out my whole team with various attacks that mostly just missed. So yeah, I reached the third phase of the fight, where I had to win this with just Joker. At first here, I tried to buff Joker's defense to survive an attack, but Shido just killed Joker on his first move. Next time, Joker was on full health, and I just spammed Magic Ointment on a physical immune persona, so he couldn't damage me, which obviously made it really easy to win. After escaping the palace in my remaining days, I maxed out all confidants and headed into Mementos to finally fight the twins. Before doing this, I equipped Joker with some weaker armor that boosted SP, as if I play this fight right, he should never actually take any damage. And the extra SP is extremely useful as he'll be spamming expensive AoE magic. Anyway, at the start of the fight, the twins exclusively go for physical moves, with Caroline using Vajra Blast and Justine going for Triple Down. These moves are very powerful, and because of my low stats, they have a solid chance to crit, so to minimize the odds my team dies, I used Physical Ointment to repel back their first strike, so I only had to worry about the second attack with Triple Down. To also help me survive, I debilitated both of them, and for damage, I used Concentrated Magarodine thanks to an item. The first phase is actually the hardest part about this fight until the final phase, but on my first try, I wasn't crit that much and advanced onto the next phase. This phase is extremely easy due to an AI quirk these two have, which is if they see you're weak to an attack, they'll use a single target version of the attack rather than an AoE. And because of their predictable attack pattern, I know exactly what element they'll use on each turn. So I can use a Magic Ointment on my whole party, then Caroline will use an Archidine on Yusuke, and Justine will go for a Mabuhudine that Yusuke will be immune to, so my party won't take any damage. Next, I need to switch Joker to Fu-Ki, who is weak to Electric, which will bait out a Zeodine onto him, then Caroline will follow up with Magarodine that won't do any damage. They now repeat the attack pattern of Fire Attack, Ice Attack, Electric Attack, and Wind Attack. So surviving here was pretty easy, and on the next phase it's similarly easy, as they use a Psy move into a Nuke move, then a Bless move, and finally a Curse attack. With Haru and Makoto, nullifying the Psy and Nuke attacks was easy, and for the Bless and Curse turns, Joker could bait in the Bless move, and we could use Magic Ointment to take the Curse moves. So overall, this phase played out the same as the last, debuff them, do a little damage, and repel back most of their damage. During this phase, they did their heal, and after that we moved on to the next phase, which is very straightforward forward, they now just repeat every attack they've used before in order. So they did the physical attacks, then the fire and ice, next is electric and wind, nuke then sigh, and finally bless and curse. After this, they switch to using severe tier abilities and do the exact same attack pattern as the last phase, which on this attempt I wasn't prepared for, and my team got devastated by riot gun and I couldn't really recover from there. Next time though went much better, and overall, as long as you see this phase coming, it's pretty easy. After this, the fight gets far more difficult, as they don't follow a predictable attack pattern anymore, which makes this phase extremely deadly, and I can't really survive more than a few turns here, as eventually they'll just use an attack combination that will just kill me. Like here, where they both used an AoE move, and Joker just died in one hit. Since that part of the fight is so hard, I really need to optimize my damage before that point, so they don't get many chances to attack in that phase. Additionally, conserving Futaba's final guard for that part of the fight was also very important to give me an extra lifeline to help me survive. So the biggest change I made to my strategy to beat this fight is on the first stage of the fight when they use physical moves, I didn't use physical ointment and instead just buffed defense and lowered their attack. The damage I get from repelling their attacks here isn't really that much, so spending my turns on buffing Joker's damage was much more worthwhile. The only risk to this plan was getting crit, but even then, the odds I would lose because of that were low. Similarly, during the bless and curse phase of the fight, they can't inflict any ailment like freeze that would obstruct me, so wasting 3 turns setting up a Karakan didn't seem worth it, and focusing on attacking with Joker felt much better since they didn't really do much damage there. Additionally, what you may realize is I'm not equally splitting my damage in this fight, as when I repel attacks back, usually only 1 hit will damage Caroline, and around 3 will damage Justine. So basically, I have to sometimes go for God's Hand on Caroline to keep an even damage split so they don't revive each other if I only kill 1 at a time. After about 5 attempts, I got the twins on this amount of HP going into the final phase. To start it off, they used Thunder Rain on Joker, which was repelled, then Final Guard protected Haru from a nuke attack. Now Joker used God's Hand to keep the damage on the 2 split, while my other party members protected themselves with ointment items. Luckily, this turn they didn't use any powerful moves, so I could deal a little damage. And before their turn, I used a Limelight to decrease the odds they targeted Joker, which helped a little, but now my team was frozen, and I couldn't heal everyone up for the next turn, where almost my whole team was wiped to a Vorpal Blade. Luckily here, I also killed Justine, and thanks to Futaba subbing in more party members, with damage items I just barely managed to scrape out a win. With them defeated, I could face Lavenza in the 3rd semester later on, and now we left Mementos and waited for Christmas Eve. Since every Confidant is maxed at this point, I actually now started to hang out with Confidants to try to fully decorate Joker's room. Anyway, now it's Christmas Eve, so we have to go into Mementos to kill God, I guess. There's a few required battles here, none are particularly difficult, it's just like the usual strat of shock them and win with physical attacks. As for the Holy Grail, I just used Tyrant's Will to charge Joker and go for big damage with God's Hand. I can actually die here as they use almighty moves, but the fight ends itself in like 3 turns, so I can't actually die. After a million cutscenes, we now had to beat 4 mini-boss fights to reach the Holy Grail. On the way there, I found this really good piece of armor that boosts HP by 50, so the first boss here was going to be much more manageable. This fight introduces the gimmick where they summon angels to use various supportive abilities. Luckily, the main boss here has a pretty low HP stat, and despite them activating Final Guard with Megiddo La, I just kind of won immediately after that. The next guy just stuck with physical attacks, and they're easily repelled with ointment items for massive damage, so they couldn't really damage me, and it was easy. The third boss was similar to the last, but they primarily use magic attacks like Divine Judgment and AoE magic moves. As you might expect, like the last battle, I just repelled their attacks back with magic ointment, and I had no problems. The final mini-boss though was actually pretty difficult. He summons the angels like the first guy. These are surprisingly tanky, and when they're low on HP, they full heal the enemy party, which is really annoying because the main boss actually has really high HP. And speaking of them, in addition to using charged sword dances, AoE magic, and divine judgment, they use Megidolon, which is really deadly. This moveset is pretty much entirely predictable though, and they only go for Megidolon every few turns. So my plan to beat this guy was to focus the angels first with Vorpal Blade, and once I was done with that, I passed Joker and spammed God's Hands, hoping for a crit. As in a few turns, he re-summons the angels who could heal him. Luckily, they only do this when on low HP, so as long as I kept focusing him down, I could win fairly quickly, and the angels alone could only use basic attacks, so there wasn't any difficulty with taking them down. Before advancing forward, I used various skill cards to set up a persona with powerful AoE light magic and a powerful God's Hand with Abaddon. And now, I faced the Holy Grail. Obviously, to start this fight off, I sent someone off to break the supply lines, and to do that, I need to deal continuous damage with God's Hands. After I charged Joker, I had to take a light edge that activated Joker's Enduring Soul, which I can only get on Abaddon. My next God Hand caused Yusuke to move up the supply lines, and after buffing and healing, Makoto's Endure was used up. One God's Hand wasn't enough to overcome the HP check to cause Yusuke to move, so I had to take another attack. Luckily, it didn't kill anyone, but it did inflict Forget, which Joker broke out of. With him on low HP, I was forced to switch to Mara and go for a strong magic attack, which still wasn't enough, and the Holy Grail could have killed Joker here if Haru didn't save him. Now I could nuke the Grail with God's Hands, prompting Yusuke to cut the lines. With him back on the team, I had an extra party member to heal and buff my team, which set up my next God's Hand to deal massive damage, while the Grail charged up a big almighty attack that Futaba blocked with Final Guard. Joker could now fire off another God's Hand to win me the battle. The Grail now turns into Yaldabaoth and the fight continues. At the start here, I just went for single target God's Hands for a little damage, while the rest of my team set up various buffs. Yaldabaoth's first attack used up Haru's Endure, so I had to lower their attack to not die in one shot. On turn 3, he pulled out his gimmick where he whips out a gun, and this can attack or inflict special status ailments. The arms they summon have different weaknesses and resistances, but fortunately, they all share a neutrality to Bless, so my AoE Bless magic was the best way to deal with them while still harming Yaldabaoth. Unfortunately, this couldn't one-shot the arms, and next turn another was called forth, which made Haru weak to everything, which fortunately didn't have much impact. Next up, Yaldabaoth brought in the sword to double the cost of all skills, which made Joker's AoE magic too expensive, but that didn't really matter much as their damage wasn't too impressive. And this time, since I defensed down the sword, I almost defeated it in a single attack, and an item could finish it off from there. The final arm Yaldabaoth summons is the Book, which is the scariest one as it can use various kinds of magic, but luckily I defeated it before it really did anything. From this point, Yaldabaoth revives some of the arms on half HP, so they could easily be one-shot by Joker's AoE magic, assuming he wasn't under a status like Hunger. Once I got Yaldabaoth down to really low health, it brought back all the arms and charged up for a really big attack, but this too wasn't a problem as I swiftly destroyed the arms and Final Guard could save me from their huge almighty blast. With a few more attacks, victory was mine and we could continue on until the new year, where everything goes crazy and we team up with 2 level 75 party members to explore Maruki's palace. Being entirely honest, these two are really strong, and most battles now do not pose any challenge. The only battle worth mentioning in this place is the final one with just Joker and Akechi, where on my first try, I died on like turn 2 to Megidolon, but next time I played a little more careful, focusing on debilitating them and healing with items to avoid a game over. With Akechi's powerful Levitanes, I eventually managed to defeat them before they healed to full, and Joker and Akechi used a showtime to end the fight. For the next week, we had to talk to people, and then we headed back to the palace, leading to a fight against Sumire, which is very easy, because I'm pretty sure she exclusively uses physical attacks, that can't harm Joker. Once I defeated her, we then had to fight her persona, which is eventually interrupted by the rest of the party members, and the fight continues. The main gimmick here is Cendrillon can use Drain to heal, so my main priority was concentrating and buffing Joker with means like Baton Pass to dish out massive damage and take out the summoned enemies as fast as possible. Cendrillon could pose some challenge as their first few attacks used up Final Guard. Luckily, they mostly stick to physical attacks, and honestly, they don't really have much HP, and I kinda just defeated them fairly quickly. Once we left the palace, there was a bunch of cutscenes that ultimately resulted in us heading back into the palace. The first required battle here is not difficult, and with freezes, I had no problem getting the Savage Shadow low, so I could use them as a persona with Fafnir. What this palace likes to do is it just places normal enemies as mini-boss fights, like this one against Dionysus and Chimera. For this fight, their damage is not high enough to kill me, and with a crit with Sumire and a few gunshots, I took down Dionysus, and a showtime completely destroyed the remaining Chimera. The next required fight was at least a little harder than that. One of the enemy goes for mainly AoE ice magic, and the other sticks to gun skills. They're both pretty tanky, but the right enemy is weak to electric, which allows me to gain a Baton Pass boost for huge damage with Megidolon. Since their damage output is fairly low, they can't really kill me here, so while it took a while to beat them, I wasn't really under much risk of losing, so I won eventually, and now we had to leave the palace. The next objective was to head to the deepest point of Mementos, but before doing that, I did laundry for HP boosting armor and talked with some party members one last time to pick up the really strong persona upgrades. For the purpose of this run, the only one that's relevant is Haru's, which basically is going to make me invincible, as it sets up both Tetrakarn and Makarakarn on the whole party. The only way for an enemy to break this is to attack multiple times or use almighty moves. Most enemies don't do this, so this trip into Mementos was pretty easy. And now I could head further into Maruki's palace, and the first required battle here is against Cert. All you need to know about this fight is the second Haru got a turn, I set up Life Wall, and now Cert can't really harm me. While killing him, I tried to use Fire Break so I could repel back his fire moves for damage, but I actually killed him too quickly for that to matter. The final guy here is easy because you can shock him, and it's also easy because he can't deal with Life Wall, so I basically won without getting hit. We now reached the end of this place, so I just had to wait for the 2nd of February to send the calling card. Before doing that, I picked up some skill cards, then headed back to the real world to complete a few preparations for the Lavenza fight. First off, I need at least one good persona that specializes in ice, wind, electric, fire, status, and physical. Then, I obviously need to max out my social links, so I had to finish 2 Mires, and I also wanted to speak with Lavenza to pick up the Enduring Soul skill card, which was going to help me survive. Finally, I wanted to collect a large amount of Haru's concentrate vegetables, and pick up Spellmaster on Haru in the Jazz Djinn to half the SP cost of her very powerful Life Wall. With those steps complete, I was ready to face Lavenza, but first, I decided to pick up 123 stamps to fight Jose. This fight is mostly cheesed with just spamming Life Walls to repel back all of his damage. I say mostly as later on in the fight, he uses Launch to set up a powerful almighty attack, which doesn't really make it hard, and he ended up killing himself with a Cyball. Finally, it was time to fight Lavenza. She starts the fight by removing my team's buffs and by fully buffing herself. So I removed her buffs, set up Life Wall, debilitated her, and buffed Joker. Unlike most bosses, in her first phase, Lavenza is able to react to our Life Walls with Makara Break, so her Blazing Hell managed to damage us. I still like to use Life Wall here, as it will basically make Lavenza waste her first turn, so she could only really act once. For this first phase, the best way to deal damage is to hit her with the correct attack based on her persona, which switches turn by turn, and I need to comply with this gimmick or I won't have the damage to beat her, and her all-out attack will wipe out my whole team. As for her damage output, as long as she's debuffed, she comes just short of one-shotting any of my party members, since with the right skills, Joker will always be immune to damage for this phase. So as long as I beat the damage check by utilizing buffs, this first phase wasn't too bad. Phase 2 on the other hand is actually really easy. All I have to do is use a single technical or else she'll kill me. I can do this by using items like Free Spray and Sleep Vials, What's also worth noting is she isn't very threatening here, as she can only rarely break through our life walls. Next up was Phase 3, which is pretty much just pure RNG. I have to land a single crit or I'll lose. With a max crit build on one of Joker's personas, and Sumire to back me up, this requirement was easy to fulfill, and charged baton boosted Levitanes do a lot of damage. As for the effectiveness of Life Wall, it's pretty good on this phase, as you can get some damage in when she uses AoE magic. She does usually attack twice, so she could damage me, but she didn't. So eventually, we moved on to the final phase, which is probably the most difficult one, as if you don't attack her, she immediately acts and swings her chainsaw at you, which is sort of countered with Life Wall, as I can just repel the move back, so it's mostly safe for me to do whatever I want, assuming she doesn't focus down a single party member, like she did for Akechi, but she didn't kill him because of Futaba activating ultimate support to heal him. Also, at first, she usually just attacks with moves that she's immune to, so repelling them back doesn't do anything. But later on, she started to incorporate moves that I could actually repel for very impressive damage. Once, like 6 turns passed, she switched to Lucifer and tried to bring me Megidolon, but Final Guard negated it. In this final stretch of the fight, I got very greedy with non-attacking moves, and Haru died, which is really bad, as I need her life walls to stay alive. So I tried to revive her, which caused Lavenza to kill her instantly. And then Akechi died, and it looked like I might lose here. Luckily, ultimate support activated to revive everyone, and from here, the battle was mostly easy, and I won with a wind move. After receiving her bookmark, I left mementos and spent my remaining days collecting room decorations to almost have Joker's room fully decorated. Anyway, we now unlock Sumire and Akechi's 3rd tier persona, and then enter Maruki's palace one final time to change his heart. The final battle here is pretty disappointing, as Life Wall mostly just cheeses it, as usually Maruki attacks with both a physical attack and then a magical attack on the same turn. As for what I was doing, I pretty much just abused the tentacles' weaknesses, so with baton passes I could cut down the tentacles to remove Azeroth's damage reduction and set me up to deal massive damage. Overall, this first phase here isn't really all that tough. As for phase 2, he can prevent the party from doing certain actions, which honestly doesn't really make it much harder. However, he does now use Tyrant Stance on this phase to charge up for a devastating Tyrant's Chaos that I didn't really have to worry about because of Final Guard. And with how much damage I was repelling back, combined with Sumire's great damage, I managed to beat this fight without issue. Next, he powers up his persona, and we fight him yet again. For this phase, a Life Wall wouldn't work, as he exclusively uses almighty attacks, like this really scary one that does a flat 300 and heals him for the damage dealt. Luckily, he didn't use this attack again, so I buffed my team, debuffed him, and with Sumire and Akechi's powerful charged and concentrated attacks, he went down fairly quickly. He now goes strong mode, and in this final phase, he can't actually kill you, so Joker ran up, shot him in his weak spot, and his challenge was over, and I beat Persona 5 without gaining experience. If you enjoyed, like the video, and that's it. Joker dies, the end.